Coming up today, the leader of Korea's main opposition party rejects President Park Geun-hye's call to begin preparations for a constitutional revision, saying allegations of corruption should be cleared up first. Korea's economic growth slows in Q3 from the previous quarter. It's more gloom for an economy rooted in the 0% growth range for 4 straight quarters now. First, Korea marks Dokdo Day to celebrate the country's easternmost islets. It comes as yet more physical evidence surfaces that shows the islets are 100% Korean territory. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Tuesday, the 25th of October. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this afternoon, the leader of Korea's main opposition party has flatly rejected President Park Geun-hye's proposal to revise the constitution to allow presidents to serve more than one 5-year term. For more, we connect to our National Assembly correspondent Park Ji-won. So, Ji-won, strong words from the opposition chief.
Good afternoon, Mark. As you said, Choo Mi-ae, leader of the main opposition Democratic Party of Korea, has reiterated her party's strong disapproval to President Park's revision proposal, which she gave at the National Assembly on Monday. At a press conference this morning, Choo accused the president of using the proposal to cover up corruption allegations swirling around the top office. The allegations, being labeled Choi Gate, revolve around a woman who's accused of exerting influence over business leaders and senior presidential aides using her long-term personal ties to President Park. The opposition party chief also called for a thorough investigation into the allegations and demanded the authorities summon Choi immediately, who's reportedly staying in Germany. She added that any constitutional revision should be led by the public, not by the president, whose announcement was made to deflect from the allegations.
OK, so that's what the main opposition party is saying, Ji-won, but how is the ruling party reacting?
Mark, during a regular meeting at the National Assembly this morning, the ruling Conservative Party stressed the importance of revising the Constitution, calling for the opposition bloc's support for the necessary change. However, topping agenda was the ruling party's attempt to handle Choi Gate. A media outlet here in Seoul reported that Choi's computer hard drive shows she has access to some confidential presidential documents. The party's floor leader Chung Jin-seok urged local law enforcement authorities to summon Choi with the help of Interpol and added that if the reports are true, then President Park herself should explain the situation to the public. Chung also called on embattled senior presidential secretary Woo Byung-woo to resign immediately amid corruption allegations involving him. The president's office said this morning that it's now trying to figure out how Choi had access to those documents. That's all I have for now, and I will bring you more updates later. Mark?
Thank you very much to our Park Ji-won reporting there. And now we're going to stay at the top office. President Park Geun-hye sat down for summit talks with Danish Prime Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen. The two leaders signed 2 agreements on industrial cooperation and health insurance on this Tuesday and vowed to upgrade practical cooperation in areas ranging from maritime safety to defence. South Korea and Denmark will also use their Green Growth Alliance to take a leading role on the international stage and help developing countries counter climate change. Seoul launched the Global Green Growth Initiative, headquartered right here in Seoul, and Denmark leads the Global Green Growth Forum in Copenhagen. Both are aimed at leading green growth in the world economy. Senior US military officials have agreed that the next presidential administration in Washington, be it Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, should prioritize national security amid continual North Korean provocations. Our Defense Ministry correspondent Kim Hyun-bin with the details.
The secretaries of the U.S. Army, Air Force, and Navy have voiced their concerns about the increasing nuclear and missile threats posed by North Korea. In an interview with the Center for a New American Security on Monday, they emphasized the next U.S. president needs to ensure preparedness against those threats. U.S. Secretary of the Army, Eric Fanning, said Pyongyang is becoming increasingly threatening and unpredictable. adding that Washington's ability to deal with any eventuality is a very important part of the calculus. His counterpart for the Navy, Ray Mabus, also called for solid preparedness, stressing that North Korea is just one of many threats facing the United States, and the next administration has to be ready to face them on day one. He said the U.S. has already forward deployed troops in South Korea and Japan in case of a crisis. Mabus said there are ground troops in South Korea, and Japan has strategic military assets in the region, including an aircraft carrier, and there are plans to deploy additional destroyers if need be. Air Force Secretary Deborah Lee James added that reviewing the United States' nuclear weapons in terms of status and when they could be used in the future is another prime task for the next administration. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Now, U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Antony Blinken is set to visit South Korea, China and Japan this week for talks on international security issues and North Korea's nuclear ambitions. The State Department says Blinken will be in Tokyo for 2 days from Wednesday for trilateral talks with his South Korean and Japanese counterparts. He's then going to travel to Seoul on Friday and he'll be here on Saturday as well for talks with South Korea's Deputy National Security Advisor Jo Tae-yong. They'll discuss international efforts to hold North Korea accountable for its provocations. Following his talks in the South Korean capital, Blinken will fly to Beijing to discuss strategic security issues, including North Korea and maritime issues. Japan is considering ways to minimize its business transactions with nations that have close dealings with North Korea in a bid to optimize the effectiveness of sanctions on the Kim Jong-un regime. Our Foreign Affairs correspondent, Kwon So-ah, with the details.
Japan is stepping up its efforts on the sanctions front, with the hope of cutting off North Korea's financial resources and thus curbing the regime's nuclear and missile ambitions. Tokyo-based Kyodo News Agency reported the news Tuesday, quoting a Japanese government source who said that Tokyo is reviewing whether to impose trade restrictions on foreign companies that aid Pyongyang by either hiring workers from North Korea or engaging in direct trade with the North. The regime has profited by selling its laborers to other countries, and Japan believes those funds are being directly channeled into North Korea's nuclear and missile programs. According to Kyodo, Chinese companies located near the border with North Korea are being closely monitored. The report says the Japanese government is contemplating the timing and extent of such new independent measures, while also monitoring the UN Security Council's discussion on a new resolution on Pyongyang for its fifth nuclear test. Tokyo is said to be expecting a protest from Beijing against further independent sanctions by Japan. The report comes amid speculation that a senior Chinese official who arrived in Pyongyang on Monday for talks with North Korean officials could be in negotiations with the North on nuclear and sanctions-related matters. According to Japan's Asahi Shimbun newspaper, the goal could be to gather information on the North's next provocations while also notifying Pyongyang about what Beijing and Washington have been discussing so far regarding additional sanctions on the regime. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Now, the South Korean economy has extended its sluggish 0% range growth into a fourth consecutive quarter, and this is pouring further fuel to lingering uncertainties the country could drop into a low growth trap. Kim Min-ji reports.
Korea's economic growth has remained in the 0% range for 4 straight quarters, fueling concerns that the country may be headed for a prolonged cycle of low growth. The Bank of Korea estimates the country's GDP rose 0.7% in the July to September period from the quarter before. Although modest, it has slowed from the 0.8% recorded in the second quarter.
Third quarter growth was mainly led by construction investment, domestic consumption, and government spending. Domestic consumption contributed 1.3 percentage points to GDP growth, while government spending contributed 0.2 percentage point.
Breaking it down by category, construction investment rose almost 4%, quickening from 3.1% in the second quarter. Government spending rose 1.4% from 0.1% the quarter before, thanks in part to the implementation of the government's budget supplement. Private spending slowed, dipping below 1% due to the end of the government's tax benefit scheme. Facilities investment fell 0.1% from 2.8% growth in the second quarter. Adding to concerns are uncertainties such as the government-led corporate restructuring drive and an anti-graft law that took effect in September, which are expected to take a toll on the already feeble growth figures down the line. The central bank also recently cut its growth forecast for the domestic economy next year to 2.8% from 2.9%. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
The head of the OECD has revealed that his organisation will change its 2017 growth forecast for the Korean economy. In an interview with Seoul-based Yonhap news agency, Secretary-General Angel Gurria said the OECD plans to revise its most recent outlook of 3% growth, saying the new projection will depend heavily on the outlook for world trade. He added that global trade was weak in the first half and this could adversely affect Korea's economy. The revision will be reflected in the OECD Economic Outlook report scheduled to be released next month. Korea's growth rate has been rooted in the 2% range since 2011, faced with weak exports, rising household debt and other economic uncertainties. A new State Budget Management Act has been approved in Korea to keep the ratio of government debt to GDP at 45% or less. The Finance Ministry said the law was approved on Tuesday at a cabinet meeting attended by Prime Minister Hwang Kyo-an. The act also stipulates that the ratio of government income and expenditures to GDP should remain below 3%. The ministry said the controls are necessary to maintain the nation's fiscal health. Korea's debt-to-GDP ratio for 2016 is at around 40%, up almost 9 percentage points in just 5 years, as the government tries to tackle a sluggish economy with more economic stimulus. The chairman of Lotte Group has apologised for the ongoing government investigation into the company's business irregularities and the family feud that has mired the company in scandals. Shin Dong-bin said on Tuesday he feels Lotte failed to meet public expectations and he promised efforts to renew the company. He also announced reforms to the group's corporate structure, including plans to list Hotel Lotte on Korea's main stock market, the Kospi, and the establishment of a compliance committee with outside experts to help the group comply with regulations. After a 4-month-long investigation, Seoul prosecutors last week charged Shin and 4 other of his family members with embezzlement and tax evasion. Charges were also filed against 14 sitting and former Lotte executives. Korea is going to launch an over-the-counter stock market next month for promising startups to help them receive investments more easily. According to the Korea Exchange, the KRX startup market will focus more on tech-intensive startups than markets associated with unlisted large and mid-sized firms. The market, which is slated to open November 14th, is expected to garner investor interest in startups that have outstanding business ideas or high technology with growth potential. KRX officials say the new market is aimed at serving as a springboard for startups to be listed on stock exchanges such as the Konex and Kosdaq. Market watchers say, however, the new market needs to be different from other OTC markets to succeed. Now today, October 25th, is a special day for Koreans as the country marks Dokdo Day, a day to celebrate the country's easternmost islets. To commemorate the occasion, the Independence Hall of Korea has publicized 2 historical documents that show Japan did not consider Dokdo its territory at that time. Ian Shin reports.
This is a Japanese geography textbook for junior high school students that was used in 1912. The map on this page shows Ulleungdo Island and Dokdo Island. But the map on another page showing areas close to Dokdo that were under Japanese jurisdiction at the time clearly excludes Dokdo from Japanese territory. Japan has since claimed that Dokdo was incorporated into the area in 1905, 7 years before the textbook was published. But there is no indication of that on this map.
I would say that is because Dokdo was widely known to be part of Ulleungdo Island. It was known as Joseon Dynasty territory, even in geographical studies by Japan.
Dokdo is also missing from a map published in 1946 as part of an article by Japan's Asahi Picture News, a segment of the Asahi Shimbun newspaper. This map was designed to show which areas were under Japanese jurisdiction after World War II. An explanation says, quote, changes in Japanese territory have been made, as indicated on the map due to the nation accepting the terms of surrender laid out in the Potsdam Declaration. And Dokdo Island is not part of the map. Japan continues, to this day, to make false territorial claims to Dokdo. But the two new documents released by the Independence Hall of Korea add to the already overwhelming body of historical evidence showing that Dokdo is Korean territory. 이은신, 아리랑 뉴스.
Well, that's all we have for now on this Tuesday lunchtime here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you as always for tuning in. We will be back throughout the day with more newscasts. Our next bulletin is coming up at 2 p.m. Korea time. So until then, goodbye.